Hello and welcome back to another Rush Duel Links video. Today we're going to be doing a deck breakdown on the 7's Axel Road Spellcasters deck. So this is a deck I've played quite a lot. I still genuinely consider this to be the strongest deck in the game at the moment, and this is the deck that I did win a tournament with. We went completely undefeated all the way through because it was a single elimination knockout tournament, which means that if we did lose a single game, we were out of there. But this deck was popping off the entire time. We only bricked in one game, so we did technically drop a singular game, but we still won the match. And this is the list that we used to do so. So we'll start off by looking at our skill 7's Axel Road. So it's a very, very good skill. First off, only Yuga can use this, so obviously we have to be Yuga to play this. This skill can be used if the only monsters with 1400 or more attack in your deck are Spellcaster types. Requirement none. One face-up monster with 1600 attack on your field that was summoned this turn gains 800 attack until the end of the turn. Then if you have activated this skill on turn 4 onward, you can return one card from your hand to the deck once per duel. If you do, add one 7's Road Magician from your deck to your hand. So, what this basically means is, once per game, we can do the swapping a card in our hand for 7's Road Magician. We can also only do that on turn 4, which does come up. You always want to be going second with this deck, because I mean, most decks at the moment want to be going second. If we do go first, it means that when we get to our second turn, it will only be turn 3 of the duel, which means this skill will not be turned on yet. We can only get the 800 boost, but we will not be able to dig out the 7's Road Magician, which means it is very, very punishing for this deck to go first. The deck is still good enough to play around that, but it is a lot more high roll and a lot stronger going second. The other thing is that 800 attack is extremely relevant, and that is because 800 on top of a 7's Road Witch will put it up to 24. Then if it gets to use its effect, it will boost itself up to 28, and 28 is fantastic because that gets over 25. The other card that is very, very important for this effect is Axel Wonder Splat. So this thing can get up to 24 of the skill, then using its own effect can boost its own attack by a further 200, putting it again 26. That's bigger than 25. That means it now attacks over things like Yami Ruler, and now attacks over any other 2500 attacker, which is very, very relevant. So if we go through the card by card, we have 7's Road Magician. This card doesn't really need any introduction, and is the linchpin of the deck. The objective is going to be to fill up our graveyard with as many different attribute spellcasters as possible to be able to boost this guy all the way up to 39, which is always going to be very, very important. Also, it mills a card from the top of your deck, which again fuels its own effect, which is again really, really powerful. Just being able to having a requirement that makes your effect better is always going to be really, really good. The only negative to this card is it's got pretty low defense, and its attack is only 2100 when it's your opponent's turn, so it's quite easy to be attacked over. Next up, we have the Splat. We already spoke about this a little bit. So one of the best parts about this card is that its requirement doesn't require a card from our hand, unlike our other level 6 monsters. Both 7's Road Witch and Torna require us to discard a card. Axel Wonder Splat mills a card from the top of our deck, which again, we want to be milling because we want to get all of our different attributes in the graveyard. And it boosts the monster by 200. It doesn't have to be itself, which means there are some situations where you want to boost something else to get multiple monsters over a certain threshold, which can be very, very powerful. That also means we can push 7's Road up to 41. There isn't usually going to be a reason to do that, but you can if you need to, and I suppose that is good to know. Next up, we have 3 copies of Currybot. Now, this card doesn't come up often, but when it does, it is invaluable. So if you have no other monsters on your field, you can pay 500 life points to add a Currybot from your graveyard to your hand. This is almost only ever going to be used as tribute fodder. You summon it out, get another one back to your hand, summon out the other one, tribute, bring out some level 6s, or tribute both to get out the 7's Road Magician. But you can also use it to get cards in your hand to discard for Torna, for 7's Road Witch, and for Thunder the Thunder. So it is multi-purpose, and it does come up quite a lot. Next up, 7's Road Witch. This is kind of the main combo piece of the deck. Whenever it's your turn on turn 4 onwards, you want to be tribute summoning out 7's Road Witch, using the effect of 7's Axel Road, boosting up to 24, then use Witch effect to cheat out our 7's Road Magician, and again 7's Axel Road has guaranteed that we have the 7's Road Magician. Cheat that out, 7's Road Witch becomes a 28, hopefully your 7's Road Magician is becoming close to a 39, and then you just have this massive blowout turn, where the objective is to get your opponent low enough that you can kill them on the next turn, whilst not being low enough yourself that you can die to their attack. So it's very aggressive and it's almost glass cannon-y, but when it does come off, it is extremely, extremely potent. Next up, Torna the Windweaver. This card is a little bit shaky for me. So this card is very, very good if your opponent has very low defense monsters in attack mode, things like Summon Skull. We can just deal with that pretty easily. And it's also good if your opponent keeps setting 3 and you want to get at their life points. But this is the only card that doesn't out very easily like 2500 attack monsters. So specifically something like a Yami Ruler that has a lot of defense points, Torna can't do anything to that. We're going to need to find our Axel Wonder Splat or our 7's Road Witch plus 7's Road Magician combo. Without that, Torna on its own doesn't do anything. That's why we're only playing 2 of it, because being able to control the board and always have the game under our control is more important than just being able to get to our opponent's life points sometimes. This deck is all about consistency and winning at our game plan, which is making sure we are always in the driver's seat and trying to just kind of grab the reins of the game and not let go. Next up, we have 3 copies of Thunder the Thunder. Again, this card is a staple, it is our light monster of choice, and it is just fantastic. Being able to discard cards can be really useful if we have too many level 6s in hands, as well as that 300 attack reduction can be extremely relevant, especially since we can modify attack points a lot. For example, our Torna can only get up to 2400 attack, but if we combine it with a Thunder the Thunder, that now means that Torna can beat over anything that's 27, which is very, very good. Obviously 27 is not going to come up very often, but now it does mean it can beat over 25s. Fire Golem is a very good fire spellcaster. This is good because it's a spellcaster, that means it can use Recovery Force and it can be used with Mystic Dealer, but also its effect does come up against Yami Ruler. Now again, this deck doesn't matter so much when it comes to Yami Ruler because our attack can get pretty big, but it does come up occasionally that you're going to want to weaken your opponent's defense and attack over it, and Fire Golem is fantastic for that. Next up, we have our Mystic Dealer, again a consistency card. We discard, we draw cards. One misconception about this card is some people will just shotgun this effect, slap it down, discard, draw a card. That is not always the best way to use this. You only ever really want to do this if you're going to be able to tribute summon it afterwards, because you don't want to just end your turn with a 1000 attack monster. A lot of the time it's actually better to just set this and just let it get attacked and killed and then draw it into a better hand next turn than to just try and shotgun its effect. It is more fun to do that, but again, if you're trying to win, Mystic Dealer is a card that needs to be used sparingly and at the correct time, not just whenever you've got it up. Dark Sorcerer is just a 1500 vanilla. It's a good dark spellcaster, and occasionally 1500 attack is going to be relevant. Again, combine it with something like Thunder the Thunder and it can deal with other 1500s. And Doriado is the best Earth spellcaster we have available to us. It just power creeps Strange Cat immediately, 1200 attack, 1400 defense. Not really much to say about it other than that. And finally, our Recovery Force spell card. So the best way to play this card is to set it and just have it sit there for a few turns, and then when you're about to do a big push, you can flip this over, throw ideally some of your better cards back into the deck, things like 7's Road Magician, things like 7's Road Witch, occasionally Axel Wonder Splat, shuffle them all back in, and then draw a card, and basically start your turn with 6, 7 cards, which is always fantastic. Having as many cards as possible in your hand during your turn is always very, very good. Gives you a ton more options, lets you make a lot more aggressive plays. So let's talk about this deck's matchups. So this deck is very, very good into just about everything. There's not really a terrible matchup, but this deck does have better matchups against some decks than others. First off, it is very, very good into the Yami Ruler deck. This deck plays under Yami Ruler very well. We do have the Fire Golems to weaken our opponent's monsters. We do have a lot of level 6s that we can summon anyway. And then using our 7's Road Witch, we can use this effect to cheat out 7's Road Magician, which means we can summon a 7 even when we're under the Yami Ruler lock. The other thing is Axel Wonder Splat, again, can get up to that 2600 attack. So on its own, this can just out a Yami Ruler, which is very, very good. The other thing is this deck doesn't really play defense a lot. It doesn't really have to most of the time. We will be making an aggressive push most of the time. Maybe the first couple of turns we'll be playing very defensively, but a lot of the time we're able to just summon out 3 big guys, smack our opponent for a ton of damage, and then have enough of a board that they can't really kill us through that. And since we already did a ton of damage on that first push, we'll then try and kill them with the second. And that's kind of how the deck works in this kind of double shot aggro. The other deck that we're seeing constantly is the Dragoncasters, and again, this deck also has a pretty good matchup into that. Now, Dragius can sometimes just kind of kill you out of nowhere, but it is generally a little bit less consistent in this deck because it doesn't have access to 7's Excel Road. The Dragoncaster deck has to play generic skills, which means it doesn't get any of our kind of more specialized skills, and that extra 800 attack and the search can oftentimes be the difference to just kind of beating over those decks. Now, sometimes you will get unlucky, and that is going to happen. This deck does have a lot of tribute monsters. We're on 3 7s. We're on 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 level 6s, which means we are on 10 tribute monsters total. That means occasionally you will break, and that is something you're just going to have to deal with. It doesn't come up very often, and as long as you're playing in best of 3 formats, it's fine. This deck is less popular on the ladder, I found, because it is a little bit more tricky to play. It requires a little bit more thought compared to like Dragoncasters, where you just kind of summon Unga Bunga, slap, slap, slap for as much as you can. This deck requires a bit of finesse. You have to know when to use what effects. You need to know when to use the 7's Axel Road skill. It's good to know when to put on the aggression and when to play passive. And and a lot of people don't really get their head around that very quickly, which means as a ladder deck, I would say this is actually not very good. This is a tournament deck more than anything else. If you're playing against like-minded people that you know are going to be playing meta-relevant decks, and you're going to be playing in like a best of 3 scenario, I think this is still the best deck. But again, ladder-wise, maybe steer clear of it. But again, it's still fine. It can still do fine on the ladder. It's just you will occasionally just lose a game here and there because of things completely out of your control. So let's fire in some replays so I can show you what I've been talking about.